why do we care about weddings? Because marriage, has all a kind of shady past in some ways. In some ways, marriage has been good. It's a great place to protect children. In modern American capitalism, it's actually still the best deal we have for making life safe for kids. But if you go back in history, marriage had so many crazy connotations, and it rarely had to do with love and romance. In ancient societies, we're talking our hunter-gatherers, there were all kinds of rituals that co-joined people for life, and that helped create safe environments to breed, handle the granting of property rights. Maybe you made a tool out of some rocks, and to protect bloodlines. We've always been a tribal people, right? It's we ought to stay somehow within the tribe. But just because you think ancient marriage was marriage, it might have had all different kinds of shapes. It could have been polygamous. Men could have married more than one woman. In fact, in Hebrew culture, if a man died, his brother was expected to marry the wife, the leftover widow, to take care of her, of course. I've even heard, I don't know if this is true, tweet me if you know more about this, at Dr. Wendy Walsh, Dr. Wendy Walsh, that it was Joseph's brother that died and might have even gotten Mary pregnant, and then Joseph stepped in, and that's why he's just walking her on the donkey to Bethlehem. I don't know, just saying. I read this book once about the history of the real royal family, you could say. So around 5 A.D., Christian theologies, such as Augustine, got involved. They started taking an interest in marriage. And it was around this time that Christians began conducting marriage, having marriages conducted by ministers and gatherings. It was this public thing. And it really wasn't until Victorian times that it was about romance and romantic love. I personally believe that that's part of the downfall of marriage, is that we have these expectations that love will stay around, that it will be beautiful, it'll last forever, the sex will be great. That is like a prescription for early divorce, as far as I'm concerned. And as soon as we started making marriage be less about providing a safe environment to raise kids and an economic union of which to run a household and save some money. Did I mention that married people tend to have a lot more money than single people? It's really expensive to maintain two households, especially post-marriage, paying alimony and divorce attorneys. It gets really expensive. So people who are married tend to have a lot more wealth. But during the Victorian era, romantic love became viewed as the primary requirement for marriage. And this was in some ways, depends how you look at it, kind of a downfall for women, because the rituals of courting became super formal. Women had to be protected from other men. Their virginity had to be protected. You know what's interesting is that whenever you see a time in history or a culture in the world today where women are disadvantaged, you tend to see that marriage rates go up. Because if women can't make money fairly out in the open marketplace, then marriage tends to be a safe place for them. Although, interesting enough, you also see prostitution rates go up. So maybe the more independent of the women, rent it by the hour versus saying, sign on the dotted line, support me and our offspring in a contract called marriage. So they got one of two ways to go when women are really disadvantaged. But romantic love, if marriage is based on romantic love, it makes it much harder to stay together. I actually am a big believer that romantic love does and should eventually morph into companionate love. And at the end of our days, it is that emotional intimacy and the care that we exchange between each other that may not be so romantic and it may not be sexual, but it is the thing that extends our lives. Did you know in 1900, the average length of a marriage was 12 years? When we come back, let me talk about why till death do us part only made sense when death was pretty imminent. So we've been talking about marriage. It is on the decline, but we do need it because we don't have anything better right now as far as raising kids. Still talking a little bit about the history. Please know that divorce has existed for as long as marriage has. It's not like we invented it. It's not like we're the new generation. In fact, the ancient Greeks liberally allowed divorce. And so it's been going back a long time. There are some other weird, bizarre marriage traditions I want to mention. Did you know in many parts of Europe and America in the 16th and 17th century, there's this concept called bundling, B-U-N-D-L-A-N-G, bundling. And that's where couples who were courting were allowed to share a bed, but they had to be fully clothed, and there was a bundling board that was put in between them to separate them. And this allowed them time to talk and just get to know each other in the safe confines of the girl's home where she's protected. And they kept their clothes on. That's an interesting date, huh? That's kind of like Netflix and chill without the chill, just the Netflix. So why is marriage so much on the decline? Let's talk a little bit about the statistics to be sure that it is. So 10 years ago, 57% of adults got married at some point in their life, and now only 51% are getting married. Just last year, 9% of 18 to 24-year-olds in the U.S. were married, compared to 45% in 1960. All right, we need to stop right there and talk about age of marriage. So it's pretty clear when you marry too young, your personality is still developing, your identity is developing. Those young people have the highest divorce rates of all. The magic age statistically is around 23. So over the age of 23, you have a lower divorce rate. Anybody marrying 18 to 24. So that's sort of good news that there are very few people aged 18 to 24 who are married. The other thing that these statistics don't tell the story of is how many people are cohabitating. Now, here's the bad news about cohabitating, that if you do live with someone, and many people live with someone before marriage because they think it's a way to audition the person for marriage, when actually you're using up the passion years. Yeah, you could be auditioning them, and you could learn pretty quick that you want to get out of that marriage, but you're also eating up the passion years. So people who are cohabitating tend to have a lower chance of actually marrying that person, and then when they do get married, they have a higher divorce rate than those who, took their time. I would say that is because those people who cohabitate tend to be people who are afraid of commitment anyway. So they want to take the time to investigate whether this is going to be okay. If you ask people who are living together why they're not married, most often they'll say they're afraid of divorce. So it's kind of ironic that you end up having a higher divorce rate if you've actually lived together. But let's see. In 2011, The Economist issued a report that said that 45% of all households included a married couple. That's according to the U.S. Census Bureau. So wait a sec. That means 55% of American households do not include a married couple. When we come back, let's talk about what this means for women, what this means for children, and what this means for the rest of us. Well, the first thing is we are just outliving the idea of marriage. It's not that marriage is completely out of fashion and unnecessary. It's that when Till Death Do Us Part was invented, death was pretty imminent. In fact, in 1900, when you married somebody and you said, in sickness and in health, you were looking at about an average of a 12-year marriage ahead of you. Yep, that was it. Somebody died in that period of time in 1900. Well, because of our better nutrition, because of our advances in medicine, we are living a really long time. And when we used to celebrate marriages that lasted 20 years, 30 years, my own parents' marriage, I think, was 36 years. And then in 1 year, they both passed away. Cancer. But those were big things to celebrate. But this idea of 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, does this really make sense? In other words, you usually marry somebody because you got a job to do together. And the job you're going to do together most often is raising a family. Sometimes it's just an exchange of care. It might be building a business or building a charity together, but you're doing something together. At a certain point, the purpose finishes. You've completed it, right? Most divorces actually happen after the nest starts to get empty. That's when that 50% divorce rate really kicks in. Because it's like, are we going to get the empty nest dog or the empty nest divorce? Have we grown apart during those years, or now are we looking forward to our retirement together? So even the most monogamous of humans, and anthropologists suggest that's about 50% of us, tend to have, or will probably have, 1, 2, or even 3 long stints of monogamy in their life. And in between, there's going to be time of new mate selection. Yeah, that's called dating. So that's one of the reasons why the fastest growing population of people in online dating websites and on apps are people over the age of 50. They're finally coming on board and realizing that obviously you're a little too old to be going out to bars and trying to find somebody. There's a much more efficient way to do it where you can aggregate a bunch of potential partners. So that's one of the reasons that we're just outliving marriage. There's more divorce. There's time where people are single, so they're not in the radar of senses that are looking for married people. But there's another really important reason, and that has to do with the rise of women. I mentioned earlier that when women are disadvantaged, marriage rates go way up and rates of prostitution go up because that seems to be the only way women can support themselves, either getting a man to pay for everything or getting many men to pay for little bits of things. And but now, because we actually have more women in the American workforce than men, and for every 2 men that graduate college, we see 3 women. Yes, we're missing women in boardrooms. We don't have enough. And yes, we're not being paid the same money on the dollar. Part of that has to do with the fact that the female-dominated industries tend to pay less, right? Teaching, childcare, elderly care, nursing, right? That caregiving stuff. So it's not just that they're women, is that women have gravitated to industries that for some reason we don't value economically in the same way that we should. Hey, in the next hour, I'm going to be talking about mannies, male nannies. And if you are a manny doing what we would call traditionally pink-collar work, I would love to hear from you, because we're going to be talking about gender and childcare in the next hour. But women are definitely more economically free than, say, they were in 1950. And so as a result, women need marriage less. That's just the bottom line. Now, one of the biggest conflicts that happens in relationships is that women simply still have a biological fertility window that men just don't have. So this is causing a problem in finding mates. And the other problem that women have is that there are many women who may want some semblance of a traditional marriage, especially if they're going to be having kids and becoming a mother. And it's harder for them to find mates because they're taking their 20s and devoting it into education and career building. And by the time they hit the marriage market, they're in their 30s. And the average age of first-time marriage for men is 27. So that means half of them are off the market by the age of, half of their peers are off the market by age 27. In fact, even the royal, semi-royal couple who got married yesterday, Pippa Middleton, she was 31 and her husband 41. So this is when we're seeing these marriages take place. But here's the fallout of it. Children. It used to be that when parents divorced, children were much older. And now we're seeing breakups happen, as I said, cohabitating couples. If they have children, 90% of them are broken up before the kid's 12. Right? And instability is bad for kids. A revolving door of parental figures, bad for kids. There's a lot of research to support this. I know it's not comfortable for single parents to hear, but dating and dragging boyfriends and girlfriends through the lives of your children, not good. I actually didn't date for a full decade as a single mother because I saw the statistics. It scared me. Also, about 15% of young adults right now, age 20 to 29, have a mental disorder like borderline or narcissistic personality disorder. And one of the causes, we say every mental disorder has a biological and environmental piece, but one of the environmental pieces is instability in childhood. Not to mention the fact that unmarried folks are poorer. Yeah, marriage is an easy way to double your wealth right there. So am I making a big case for marriage? Am I saying we all need to get married, especially if you're going to have kids, you need to be married? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we need more supports for single parents. We need to be more like Sweden that even has single-parent living facilities where you share kitchens and save on rent. We need to have childcare in every workplace. Woohoo! What a thought. You always talk the business. Oh, we lose women. I don't know why they opt out. I don't know why they leave. They leave because a baby's home is its mother's body. So put the babies near the mother, and you're going to keep great female employees. All right, that's all I'm going to say on that soapbox. When we come back, I'm still on the subject of marriage. I want to talk about rising interracial marriage and some interesting trend that I'm seeing in our media right now. This is the Dr. Wendy Walsh Show on KFI AM 640. Larry Perrell has the news. Important historic things coming up. On June 12th will be the 50th anniversary of the 1967 U.S. Supreme Court decision, Loving versus Virginia, which, if you saw the movie Loving, beautiful movie, by the way, you know it struck down all anti-interracial laws. I'm not even going to try to say that word. Miscegenation laws remaining in the 16 states. And interracial marriages indeed have increasingly grown since then. The data I have is from 2013, and it shows that about 12% of newlyweds married somebody of a different race. And so some racial groups are more likely to intermarry than others. Of the 3.6 million adults, for instance, who married in 2013, 58% were American Indian. American Indian tend to date, mate, and marry outside of their race the most. 28% were Asian, 19% were black, 7% of whites have a spouse whose race was different from their own. But when you look at this data, it masks something else. These numbers mask significant gender gaps within some racial groups. I don't have to tell you that among blacks, men are much more likely than women to marry someone of a different race. Fully 1/4, that's 1 in 4 of black men who got married in 2013 married somebody who was not black, while only 12% of black women married outside their race. There's actually a great book, I've talked about it before, I hope we can get the writer on sometime, called Is Marriage for White People? And I think it's from UC Davis, sociologist, and he basically makes a case that for black women to want to really save the black family, which is the reason why many of them remain unmarried or are waiting to find a black man to marry, according to his data, he suggests that marrying outside their race is the way to do it. Now, for Asians, the gender pattern goes in the opposite direction. Asian women are much more likely than Asian men to marry someone of a different race. And among those newlyweds in 2013, 37% of Asian women married someone who was not Asian. 16% of Asian men married outside their race. So I think we've had the changing attitudes. We all understand that. In 2014, a survey asked Americans whether they felt interracial marriage was good for society, bad for society, or didn't make a difference. I'm happy to tell you that 37% of Americans said it was a good thing, and 51% had said it doesn't make a difference, which is where we should be. Do that math. That's 88% of people either think it's great or it doesn't really make a difference. So that's good. Which brings us around to the gender gap issue that has personal importance to me. I think you know that my family is multiracial. My children are mixture, black and me. I'm an Irish girl, Irish, Canadian, American. I'm everything. But ethnically, I would be European. And I want my daughters to be able to marry whoever they want because they fall in love or because I want grandbabies when I want them. And so this statistic about 70% of black women being unmarried kind of bothers me, especially because I'm raising 2 black women. And so I'm watching the trends in our culture. And I mentioned that there are 2 historic events coming up. And one is June 12th, when we finally celebrate the 50th anniversary of the U.S. Supreme Court decision in Loving versus Virginia, allowing interracial marriage everywhere. And the other is tomorrow night, right here on ABC Network. For the first time in history, we are going to see a black bachelorette. Okay? It's almost embarrassing for them to be making a big deal about it because you're a little late to the party, bachelor and bachelorette. But we do know that that show has been criticized a lot because it's not been racially diverse. And when they do have bachelors that are racially diverse, they get like kicked off the island early. It always bothers me. So now we have a barrier-breaking journey, they're calling it. Rachel Lindsay is her name. I think she's from Texas. She's an attorney. And they worked very hard to get some diversity among the bachelors that she will pick, and they are only 51% white. That means if the majority are white, there's a real darn good chance that she will hook up with a white guy on national television. Yay! Score one for the Brown Girls Club. All right, let's take it one further. I saw this amazing movie that opened this weekend. It's not amazing. It's an average teeny bopper love story, silly movie. It's Rapunzel told in modern times, girl locked in the tower because she has some illness. Prince gets her out. But it is starring Amandla Stenberg. You remember from The Hunger Games where she played Rue. Now she's 18 and hot. And it's a love story where she is black, the boy is white, and there is no mention of race anywhere in the whole movie. Thank goodness we've come along. You're wrapping me up, Maria. I still have to talk about Meghan Markle because the whole reason that Meghan Markle didn't get to go, we're talking about Prince Harry's American divorced girlfriend from Suits, didn't get to go to the royal wedding yesterday was because there's talk that they might get engaged. So we might have an interracial marriage in the palace. This is all good news for me. I want grandkids. I don't care what color they are.